There is a way to do manual buttonholes, and I like to use the foot 3C. So it's actually just a standard foot, but it has the grooves that we need underneath the foot to keep the buttonhole guided. We also use this foot over in the gathering video, and we're going to hook a cord around the front of this toe, which is also how you can do corded buttonholes that are much longer than your standard 3A foot. Now, when you pick a buttonhole, you'll notice that you will find your buttonholes. You can choose any one of them. You will have a little record option. So if you just start stitching, it will record the length that you do and exactly the steps. Once we start stitching, there'll be a reverse button feature that will come up to indicate that that's what we need to actually use. But if you go over to I, and you'll probably be right here, which means that you need to scroll down for the manual buttonhole, which is what we're really going to start with. Also, there's that little reverse button. But a buttonhole has 7 steps. So if you just need to repair a buttonhole, you could say, I need to repair, for example, the right leg or the right hand stitching of the buttonhole, and you can pick any one of the steps to go right to it. Now I'm going to show you how you do it from start to finish. And there was one time I had to make a buttonhole that actually was bigger than my screen here, just for a project. And I went ahead and stitched it as far as I needed it to go. And then I touched the next step, and it did the next step. And until I got all the way around, it just kept going until I told it to do the bar tack at the top or to lock it at the very end. So let's get started and show you how this works. So it's just like a regular foot. Go ahead and put it on. It has a little groove on the side to slip your threads through. I'm going to go ahead and just mark a standard, nothing too fancy, for starts and stops. So if I go ahead and lower down my presser foot, and I can see if I am lined up with my needle, sink your needle down into the fabric if you are unsure. And I'm going to start with step 1. So step 1, as I start to stitch, is going to be the satin stitch coming towards the line. So just sew until you see the line down at your needle. Then we're going to touch our reverse button one time. That's going to move it to the next step. Now on a standard Bernina buttonhole, that next step, so I'm on step 3 of 7, is a straight stitch back to where I started. So I'm looking for the line back at the top. I'll stop when my needle is even with my first stitch, touch reverse again. It will do just the right amount of stitches for the tack. So just keep your foot on the foot control until it stops. It has. Touch reverse. Now it's going to go ahead and stitch forward on the right leg of the buttonhole. I'm still in charge of the length. Great. So I'll just sew until that stops, touch my reverse button, and then I will just let it stitch the tack at the bottom. And the last step is actually the locking stitches. So it will finish it completely for you. And then go ahead and cut that. And now you have any length of buttonhole that you desire. Just all you need is a start, a stop, and touching the reverse button to change it along the way to each of the 7 steps. Let's also talk about the record feature. So let's go ahead. I'm going to just come out of here. We can almost just pick another buttonhole that almost clears it out. And then when you come back into I for information, if you touch record, what it will do is whatever length that you do this, it will record the length. So you can kind of manually put in the length, and it is counting, that's the 1, 2, 3 record feature, counting how many stitches it took to get from point A to B, and then of course back to where it was going. So it's really nice to be able to then have the buttonhole memorized without having your traditional buttonhole foot on. Let's go ahead and do one. Let's start with a little mark, top and bottom. And I'm going to do it so you can see both the screen and the foot here. And then I'm going to just get this kind of lined up there. Okay, so it's going to record the first buttonhole that we do. Now this one will be slightly different, where it's going to go ahead and stitch down the left side towards us. Once again, I'll stop when I get to my mark, touch the reverse button, and that is indicated there on the screen. And then it stitches directly back with the satin stitch on the right side. Now once again, look, I'm looking for the mark I made. And there it is. And I'm going to touch reverse again. Okay. And then it's going to go ahead and do the tack, a lock, and I can cut. Now what it has actually done, because now it says auto and it is 20.2. 2 millimeters long. So now it will go ahead and stitch that same buttonhole that you just recorded on the fabric over and over and over. So that's another way to do a buttonhole with this foot where you're not limited to the length of the traditional buttonhole foot that comes with your machine. So we use the auto feature here and the manual feature to get additional lengths to our built-in buttonholes.